Aloha, everyone. My name is Christina Laney Mitri, and I'm your host for Smart Living Hawaii's podcast. And we discuss smart homes and technology, sustainability, healthy lifestyles, and smart business. So today we're going to have a Sustainable Leaders Series topic we have Michael O'Keefe. He is the Deputy Director of the Department of Environmental Services for the City and County of Honolulu. And we are going to be jumping into landfills and hurdles we faced with our waste here on Oahu. And thank you, Mike, for joining us.
Aloha, thank you. It's my pleasure.
So before we start, I'm just going to jump right into his quick bio here. Mike has worked in the City and County of Honolulu's Department of Environmental Services for 15 years, including 10 years in its refuse department, 3 years in the Office of Administrative Support, and 2 years as deputy director. And he oversaw the ENV's solid waste collection, recycling and disposal operations, the landfill, and H-Power. In the Office of Administrative Support, Mike oversaw the ENV's long-range CIP planning and budgeting, the GIS, which I don't know all these, the acronyms, and labor relations, wastewater customer service and safety. Mike also manages ENV's financial model and its wastewater revenue bond program. So we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. He has a master's degree in urban planning for the University of Southern California and a master's degree in public administration from the University of Hawaii. So without further ado, thank you so much for being here today. And we wanted to just kind of dive into landfills. But before we do that, maybe you can share with us a little bit more about, are you born and raised here in Hawaii?
I'm not, no. I'm born and raised on the East Coast in Pennsylvania, in the Philadelphia area.
And then what brought you across the country to Hawaii?
Ultimately came to Hawaii for grad school. Yeah, and went to UH for grad school.
Awesome.
And just stayed.
I guess you decided to stay.
Yeah.
A lot of people do. And then what kind of got you into this field of work? I mean, what was kind of led you to, I always ask for passions. I always like to know people's passions. So it's good to hear.
Yeah, so I've always been interested in both kind of public service and sustainability as well. So when I was in grad school at UH, we had a guest speaker, a guest lecturer in class, and at that time she was the head of the city's recycling program. So she came in and she talked to us about bureaucracies and the city and recycling too. And at the end of her lecture, she mentioned that they had some openings at the city. At that time, the city was just getting ready to roll out its curbside recycling program, the 3-bin system, the gray, the green, and the blue cart. And they were looking for people to help roll that program out. So that was 2006. And so I told her I was interested and applied, and I've been with the department ever since.
And just working your way up there. Okay.
Yeah.
So since we are on the topic of landfills, I wanted to maybe give a general overview of how our waste here works, because it's different everywhere. And I know that in some other podcasts we talked about H-Power a little bit and recycling, because we did do a podcast with Henry Gabriel, and he kind of talked more about his department. But maybe we can just do a quick overview of how where our trash goes when we throw it in the trash bin really quick, and then talk about our landfills.
Yeah, sure. Sounds great. So Henry's the man. Like, he runs the recycling program, and he probably gave you the whole story on trash on Oahu, but I'll recap it real briefly. So the vast majority of waste on Oahu gets processed through our waste to energy facility, H-Power. In 2022, for example, H-Power received and processed about 750,000 tons of trash. And then, so what happens at H-Power, it burns the trash to generate electricity. There's a process in the processing systems at H-Power that extracts metals from the trash. So H-Power, of the 750,000 tons that go into H-Power every year, about 20,000 tons of that comes out as recycled metal. And then, yeah, so once that trash is burned, there's left over about 150 to 200,000 tons of ash and residue, just stuff that's not combustible, not burnable. So that material makes up kind of the vast majority of material that goes into our landfill, currently the Waimanalo Gulch landfill out in Honolulu. So so onto the landfill, I guess. The landfill exists primarily to take ash and residue from H-Power and other kind of oddball waste streams that can't be processed through H-Power, that can't be burned, in other words. That represents about 20 or so thousand tons of material, and then there's a little bit of regular trash that goes into the landfill just when H-Power has maintenance outages and has to shut down and can't take trash. So that kind of covers trash, H-Power and the landfill. But then there's also, as Henry probably explained, a really robust recycling program on Oahu. The city has the blue cart system. There's 160,000 homes that have blue carts, approximately, that have blue carts on Oahu. And we recycle about 25,000 tons of material a year that are placed into those blue carts. That's glass containers, aluminum containers, plastics number 1 and 2, cardboard, newspaper. And then kind of to round it off, there's the city has a pretty robust green waste recycling program as well. We recycle about 75 to 80,000 tons of green waste a year. A lot of that green waste comes in the curbside green carts that are at the 160,000 or so homes. And then the city has a series of I think we have 6 refuse and recycling convenience centers, basically drop-off centers where you can also take green waste to recycle. There's a separate bin, you put it in the bin, and then the bin goes to the recycler, to the same place that all the green cart material goes as well. So yeah, I mean, our main goal at the Department of Environmental Services when it comes to solid waste management, when it comes to trash management, is just keep it out of the landfill, divert as much as possible from the landfill. We do that through reuse and source reduction programs, like the plastic bag ban, for example. Just don't create the trash to begin with, right? Mm-hmm. The new disposable foodware ordinance that regulates disposable foodware and single-use plastics. If we can't reduce the waste at the source, we recycle it. If we can't recycle it, we'll burn it at H-Power. And the very last resort is the landfill to take stuff that can't be burnt or recycled or reduced, and it goes to the landfill.
How much is actually like not burnable? Like do we have a percentage? I have no clue.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And there's not much. The landfill really exists, like I said, to take ash and residue. There's about I'm gonna go off memory here, but there's about 50,000 tons or so every year of material that can't be processed through H-Power or can't be recycled. And that's just kind of really, really unusual, strange trash that can't be burnt, kind of inert materials like rocks, certain types of soil, certain types of textiles, stuff like that, that just can't be otherwise recycled or processed through H-Power that end up at the landfill.
What about like, so all appliances and everything, they just, like, what about cars?
Yeah, that's a good question. Cars will get recycled. So there's a couple of recyclers on island that'll take cars.
But then they ship it, yeah, to the mainland.
Exactly. Yeah. They actually feed it into a really big metal shredder. They take off the tires, they drain all the fluids from the car, and then and those things are recycled separately. And then the car, just like kind of like the metal skeleton itself, is just like dumped into a shredder. And the shredder spits out metal, and then those bits and pieces of kind of ground up plastic and rubber that are, make up dashboards and seats and chairs and stuff like that. So that stuff comes out too. That's not recyclable. That's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's actually one other kind of significant component of what goes into the landfill. That stuff is called auto shredder residue, ASR. It's that mix of plastic and rubber that is part of the car. We can't take ASR, even though it's petroleum based and really actually does burn well. We could certainly burn it at H-Power, but there's some pretty nasty stuff in there. There's some
That's what I heard of.
chemicals. Yeah.
I was thinking, there was somebody I was talking to and he worked for a company and that's what they mostly manufacture. And I think that company was hiring a sustainable, like, sustainable officer to help almost like mitigate that and then kind of change and transition into other areas of business because of how, I guess, toxic it is, or that it's not. Like, I had no idea. I mean, that was very to me to hear. But we work with the city and county and the storm water runoff because we do the Pearl Harbor bike path cleanup. So we deal, like, last year we worked with, I mean, the Navy has had like over 50 cars on their land, and we had to figure out how to get rid of it because, well, they weren't getting rid of it.
Right.
So
I've seen the mess over there.
They did allow us to help them get rid of it. Let's put it that way. So I think there was close to 50 cars at the end of the day, but I mean, Snitzer Seal and I think Albert's towing company, like, they helped, but it's not like something that they'd be like, oh, okay, we'll do that next time. It was like a lot of work pulling out the cars, and then it's like, I'm wondering how much they actually make off of it. I wasn't too sure. And then where does all this extra stuff go? Because we are there now and there's still a whole bunch of cars there still, and growing because people just dump off the cars right there. And I mean, for tires, what about tires? What happens with tires? I know we collect them when we do they count how many tires, and I think it's it goes somewhere else, or what do they do?
Yeah, that's a good question. Some tires have kind of several different destinations, several different end users. Some tires actually go to H-Power, where we burn them with the trash and they generate electricity. Some tires, if the tire is not processed through H-Power and just recycled, it'll go back to the mainland. If the tire still has some usefulness to it, it'll get retread and then sold as a used tire. But if it's pretty useless, it'll just get ground up. The metal beads, there's a metal wiring basically that runs throughout the tire. The metal beads will get pulled out, and then the tire will most oftentimes will get used as crumb rubber in like a playground or construction application. And so either reused or crumb rubber.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, now that we have that idea, I was curious about the ash because I actually haven't seen it, or I haven't, I haven't gone on a tour that you guys have, which we can talk about in a little bit. But how toxic is the ash? I mean, is it a pretty toxic substance?
It's got some nasty things in it. It's got some heavy metals in it, like lead, zinc. Yeah, so you don't want to really handle it. We have a really robust ash management and emissions control system at H Power. So all of it, even though there's some pretty nasty stuff in there, it's all managed well and tightly contained. So yeah, that shouldn't be a concern.
But does it just like get dumped off at the landfill, or does, I mean, I'm thinking, when I think of ash, I think of like, oh, it's just gonna blow away in the wind. But
Yeah,
I
it's a
realize,
fair question. So when it goes to the landfill, it does come out kind of like rocky looking and a little bit of dust. But what we do is we'll load it in a big kind of semi trailer, wet it down a little bit to mitigate any dust issues, and then trailer it off to Waimanalo Gulch where it we'll just put it in the landfill. And it really looks like just really small pieces of rock and dirt. Like it doesn't look like what people might think of when they think of ash from like if you just burn trash out in your backyard or like a campfire or something like that. It almost looks like really fine dirt and gravel.
okay.
Yeah.
And then, where are the locations? I mean, so there's Waimanalo Gulch and there's one in Kapolei, right?
There's as far as landfills go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's Waimanalo Gulch, which is in Nanakuli, and then a little bit further down the road in Waianae, there's the PVT landfill. So the PVT landfill is a privately owned and operated landfill that takes construction and demolition waste. We just take at Waimanalo Gulch, we don't take what's called C&D, construction and demolition waste. We just take regular, what's called municipal solid waste, just like your regular household trash and trash from businesses and stuff like that. But those are the two landfills, both on the leeward side.
And then from my understanding, they're getting full. Like how
Um,
full is full and how much time do we have? And then the next question is where to next?
yeah, so that's an interesting question. So I can tell you what I've heard about the PVT landfill, the privately owned and operated landfill, because we at the city don't have a ton of insight into what they're doing there, what their operating plan and outlook is, but they are filling up, and I believe that they're going to be full and closed down within, I've heard anywhere between 3 to 5 to 7 years. It depends. But we're kind of keeping a close eye on that. Waimanalo Gulch has a little bit more life left in it. At current waste generation rates, I think we're looking at the amount of airspace Waimanalo Gulch has to accept waste until it's full is about 2035 or so.
Oh,
But we will be out of Waimanalo Gulch before it's full. We have one of our permits that allows us to operate the landfill at Waimanalo Gulch is requiring us to close Waimanalo Gulch and stop taking trash there by March 2nd of 2028.
just because of the permits.
Yeah, we have one of the permits we have for there is called a special use permit. It basically allows the landfill to exist in a land area that doesn't typically accommodate landfills.
Okay.
And so there's as a condition in that permit, that condition says you have to close Waimanalo Gulch, stop accepting waste there by March 2nd, 2028.
So what's the plan?
So we're in the process of trying to find a new landfill. It has not been easy, and as folks might have seen in the news, we've been trying for a little while now, and are still trying. And so I can walk you through that process a little bit if you'd like.
Yeah.
So yeah, so just real brief history on this process or project to site a new landfill. I mentioned that we have this special use permit to be at Waimanalo Gulch. So
And that's a
uh,
city of county of Honolulu has, especially,
yes,
right?
exactly, yeah. So that condition in our permit, that condition that says that we have to stop accepting waste at Waimanalo Gulch by March 2nd, 2028, that was added to our special use permit in November of 2019. So then in September of 2020, the state passed a bill that became known as Act 73. So Act 73 said you cannot site a landfill within a half a mile of any residential property line, any within a half mile of a school, within a half mile of a hospital, and a landfill cannot be in a conservation district. So those Act 73, which again came in 2020, put some pretty hard restrictions on where a landfill can go on Oahu. It was even before Act 73 came, it was already very difficult to find a location, and that made it extremely difficult. In addition to the restrictions in Act 73, there are others. There are several others actually. A landfill cannot be sited within 10,000 feet of an active airport. There's 4 active airports on the island. And then a landfill cannot be sited in a tsunami inundation area. And there's also a restriction. The city and counties, the Honolulu Board of Water Supply, has what's called a no pass zone. And the no pass zone it covers the vast majority of the island of Oahu. And on the outside of the no pass zone is cap rock underneath the soil. Inside the no pass zone, underneath the ground is the aquifer, the drinking water aquifer. So Board of Water Supply does not want the city to site a landfill in the no pass zone out of concern, understandable concern that the landfill could, if contaminants were to leak out of the landfill, it could ultimately get into the drinking water system and pollute the drinking water system. So there's just kind of layer upon layer upon layer of restrictions when it comes to looking for a new landfill.
I mean, did you just like map out the entire island at this point and see like what land actually qualifies, and then what, I'm assuming it's just privately owned at this point, or?
Yeah, we actually did that in a landfill siting project that I'm going to tell you about now. So what happened was, the decision about the condition, the closure date in our special use permit came in 2019. Act 73 came in 2020. This administration, Mayor Blangiardi's administration, takes office in 2021. And what the mayor does and ENV does is we convene what we call the Landfill Advisory Committee. Basically, like an 8-member group of stakeholders, people representing various industries, various knowledge, have knowledge in various topics, various experts in certain things, to come together and learn about solid waste on Oahu, study the island, and figure out where the next landfill can go. Because we do need a landfill. It's unfortunate, but we do need a landfill. H-Power needs a landfill for its ash and residue. There's these tricky wastes that we haven't figured out how to reduce at the source, and we haven't figured out how to recycle or burn them yet. And we still need a landfill for those wastes. Ultimately, our goal is to not have an everyday landfill, we're not there yet. So this landfill advisory committee was convened in 2021 by Mayor Blangiardi. It met 8 times between October 2021 and June 2022. And like I said, the landfill advisory committee did a bunch of stuff. They learned a lot about solid waste management. We went on site visits. We had presentations from the Board of Water Supply, various industry experts. And then toward the end of the committee process, the cities, we have a technical consultant on board helping us identify these very, very, very few remaining areas of the island that could accommodate a
And
landfill.
how big do they have to be? I mean, like how much?
Yeah, it's a good question. We probably need about 100 acres for the landfill. But the tricky part about that is because of the requirements in that Act 73 that I mentioned, that you have to have a half-mile buffer between the landfill and residences, schools, hospitals, and such. Because we have to maintain that half-mile buffer, we need the 100 acres plus a half-mile buffer around that 100 acres. So that equates to 400 or so acres, give or take. It depends on what the footprint of the landfill
Any area
looks
right
like.
that has like all this land is like in the mountains.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it's probably preservation and conservation.
There's no good place to put a landfill on Oahu. I mean, land is already like very sparse and sacred here, and to look for a parcel that a chunk of land, 400 to 500 acre chunk of land for a landfill is like extremely difficult considering everything, not the least of which is
like I don't even know landfills. Like this is so bad. I mean, I guess maybe I should know, but when you do have a location, is it like you're digging that hole?
That's a great question.
Is there a liner? Like
yeah, no, it's a great question, and it really depends on the location. So if there was just a plot of land that was flat, and you say, this is where my landfill is going to be, there would pretty much be no digging. You would put down a really robust liner system. The liner system would be, we're proposing to do a double liner system, which is well beyond what regulations require, just out of precaution. So we put down a double liner system. We put down what's called a leachate collection system, which is basically a series of pipes and pumps underneath or within the liner system that collect leachate, which is water that comes in contact with the trash and then kind of percolates out through the trash. Kind of gross stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, we collect that. We do that right now at Waimanalo Gulch. We collect that, pump it into like these big giant collection tanks, and then the collection tanks are taken to the wastewater treatment plant and processed like wastewater. But yeah, it wouldn't necessarily be digging if we were on a flat parcel. But if we were like Waimanalo Gulch is called like it's called a canyon fill landfill. So it's like it's kind of wedged in a mountain. So what you do in a situation like that is you would kind of excavate within the canyon of the mountain to create like a nice pocket for where waste would go.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we haven't got anywhere. There's not like a proposed location, or
there isn't right now. So that kind of was the conclusion.
We have 5 years.
We have 5 years.
So
that was the conclusion of the mayor's landfill advisory committee. We did give them 6 sites to evaluate. The problem was that those 6 sites are in the what I mentioned before was the Board of Water Supply's no pass zone. The only reason they were given those 6 sites is because the sites that those areas are in, that is literally the only available areas of land on Oahu that are not otherwise impacted by all of the restrictions I talked about before. So
So,
it's just the, yeah.
and who owns those areas? Are they, some of them actually individually owned, or it's part of the state or federal?
It's a mix. It's a mix of private and state owned land. Yeah.
Hmm,
Yeah.
interesting.
So yeah, we gave the landfill advisory committee these sites. The committee did evaluate and score the sites based on criteria that we established for them. But at the end, the committee issued this report and said, we're not going to recommend any of the sites because they're in the no pass zone. And so that kind of brings us almost to present day. We are following the advice that the committee gave us, which was not to name any of the sites that they evaluated, and instead look at other sites that are not above the, or try to look for other sites that are not in this no pass zone, including possible federal sites. And also, they want us to look at the state law, that Act 73 that I talked about, that established this half-mile buffer zone around, against residents, schools, hospitals, and such. They said we should look at that and maybe somehow rolling some of those restrictions back, working with the state to introduce a bill to roll some of those restrictions back so that could possibly open up other sites for a landfill. But yeah, so we're looking at that. We're looking at that now, and we did have to. I should also mention that there were two primary requirements in our special use permit decision that came in 2019. One was the one that I mentioned, which was close Waimanalo Gulch basically by March 2nd, 2028. But we also had to name a new site by December 31st, 2022. So last December. So after we got that recommendation from the Landfill Advisory Committee to not go with one of the sites that was above or within the no pass zone, and they said look at federal land, look at military land, look at maybe rolling back some of these state regulations. We agreed and we followed that advice. And so what we did was we submitted a request to amend the December 31st, 2022 deadline to name a site. We asked for 2 more years to do that because yeah, we need it.
Okay, so you guys are, okay, so my question is, if there really a site does not come available, are you then, I mean, there's no other option. Either they extend. I mean, if nothing comes available, it's because you looked at every single possible option and nothing. I mean, they would just have to make some kind of concession somewhere, right? I mean, what do you do?
Yeah, that's really the $1 million question. The mayor has been very public about his commitment that the next landfill not be on the leeward coast. So we're not looking for a new landfill on the leeward coast. We're really and we have a consultant helping us with this. We're really kind of scouring the rest of the island to see what's currently available. There's little to nothing currently available. So what would maybe become available if we were to somehow legislatively roll back some of these restrictions that are currently in place, if we're able to maybe negotiate with the military to use some of their land for a landfill, land that they might not need, and land that's also outside of the no pass zone, not above the aquifer. So we're really kind of intently focused on those 2 courses of action right now, and we're hopeful that's going to yield a result.
Okay, cool. Well, I don't want to take much more of your time. Could you share briefly about the trash tours? Because I know that I think before our Eco Rotary, that's how I know Tina, and she introduced me to you guys. And we were going to do a trash tour before COVID, and then COVID hit, and then it kind of got shut down. And then actually I think I saw the YPs like have one set up with you guys, or they just did one or something. But I was curious as to maybe we can do one again with our, well, one with our, for the first time with our Eco Rotary. And maybe you can explain what the trash tour is for our listeners.
Sure. Yeah, we have this really popular program. It went on pause for a couple of years for COVID, but it's called Tour de Trash, and it is a touring series. And when it was really going strong right before COVID, we would do 4 tours a year, and the tours would have, each tour would have a theme. So one theme would be like a recycling and waste processors tour, where that was our most popular tour. That would go to H Power, the waste to energy facility, the landfill, Triple R Recycling, which is a really large recycling company on Oahu that takes all of our blue cart recyclable materials. And it would also go to Hawaiian Earth Recycling, which is the largest green waste composter on the island, and that's the same company that takes all of our green cart green waste, basically. And then there's other tours. We had a wastewater tour where you could go to see wastewater treatment plants and pumping stations and other wastewater facilities. There was a reuse tour where you could go to or where we would bus people to organizations like Reuse Hawaii and other kind of sustainability reuse oriented organizations. And that tour obviously focuses on how to manage our waste stream more effectively upstream, rather than we creating waste and have to deal with it at H Power or the landfill. So it was hugely popular. We would provide like a motor coach from Roberts, pick people up most of the time at Kapolei and then bus them all around the island to these tour sites. It was free, and we would guide the tour, and it was really cool. We're bringing it back this year. We're bringing it back. We have one tour that folks can sign up with. I think the registration is going to start. Actually, it's a coincidence that we're talking about this right now, because I think registration is supposed to start towards the end of this month, so really soon. And you can check it out on our website. It's honolulu.gov / Opala, OPALA, the Hawaiian word for trash. And you can just you can see the links, you can just navigate to Tour de Trash. So that's Tour de Trash, but there's also, for your purposes or anyone's, we do custom tours. So if you don't want to go to all those tour sites, or if you want to see certain facilities, or if you just want to see the landfill or just want to see H Power, you can contact our department, 768-3200, and talk to either Henry, who you talked to before, or somebody in ENV, and they can we do custom tours, custom private tours all the time, and that would be no problem.
And then is there a fee for the tours, or how does it?
No, it's free. It's free.
I'm thinking of a way to do a fundraiser.
Yeah.
For Eco Rotary.
Yeah.
And then, okay, well, that sounds great. I think that we will be touching base on that, and I'll talk to our Eco Rotary about it to see if it's something we'd like to pursue, because one of our areas of focus is waste reduction for sure. So and it's something we cover, and we do a lot with composting and things like that. So we do obviously recycling and all these things. So it's definitely up our alley, and I would really like to get more people involved and be more aware of where our trash goes, because it definitely puts things into perspective for everyone when we know the system, right? Like even with food,
Totally.
like where your food comes from, versus where your trash goes. It's like you just flush the toilet and then the water's gone.
Yeah.
You don't really, you're like, wait, that ends up in the ocean. Like, I mean, just the whole process of everything, we kind of have been disconnected as as everything gets so efficient. And learning about it, I think, lets us get more I guess, how can we help and solve some hurdles and problems and be more mindful of what we're doing to our environment. So
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, and that's absolutely why we have these tours. It's so people gain that understanding and appreciation of what it takes to do this stuff, right? Like people don't think about what happens often with their trash when they throw it away or when they flush the toilet, but you definitely figure out what happens when you go on these tours.
for sure. Well, I think that's it. I got some, we have some extra like social media handles and everything. I'll go ahead and put that up on the podcast verbiage and everything that so people can connect with you guys. And then email wise, I did get ENV at honolulu.gov if anybody has some questions or if you want to get connected. And then what was that phone number again? I think is what you gave for, was it the Tour de Trash?
Sure, the tour de trash or any really custom tour that you would like is 808-768-3200.
3200. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it. Thank you so much for your time, Mike. And we'll be pushing this out shortly and we'll get you all the information.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody, for listening. And that's all I have for you today. So subscribe to our podcast. You can check out our website at smartlivinghawaii.org and then look up podcasts, or you can check us out on any podcast platform that you see, look up Smart Living Hawaii. Okay, guys, thanks so much. Mahalo. Bye.